The sky had always been a canvas of dreams, a boundless expanse promising exploration and discovery. Then, one day, it became a tomb. Not a slow, creeping darkness, but an instantaneous, incandescent obliteration. There was no warning, no diplomatic overture, no declaration of war. Just the sudden, unyielding descent of fire from above. They came not in sleek, elegant vessels, but in hulking obsidian monoliths, blotting out the sun as they positioned themselves in synchronous orbit, their underbellies bristling with an unknown, terrifying technology. The first strike was surgical in its precision, devastating in its scope. Global communication networks imploded in a shower of electromagnetic interference, followed milliseconds later by the first impact. Sprawling metropolises, once beacons of human achievement, vanished in blinding flashes that seared the very atmosphere. Spires of glass and steel, once monuments to human ingenuity, became incandescent funeral pyres. Their light swallowed by the encroaching dust and the perpetual twilight of a world choked by its own demise. Earth's defenses, formidable by terrestrial standards, were rendered obsolete in moments. Fighter jets, screaming into the sky with desperate bravado, were swatted aside like gnats. Their advanced avionics fried, their pilots vaporized before they could even launch a missile. Ground-to-orbit platforms, designed to intercept ICBMs, vaporized under targeted energy bursts that punched through hardened bunkers as if they were made of paper. The sheer, overwhelming superiority of the aggressors was absolute. They did not conquer, they cleansed. Wave after wave of bombardment swept across the continents, systematically dismantling every facet of human civilization. Power grids collapsed, plunging continents into an eternal night. Water purification systems failed, turning fresh springs into stagnant pools. The very air grew thick with ash and the acrid stench of a million funeral pyres. Humanity, once the dominant species, was reduced to cowering, scrambling vermin, hunted by the very environment it had once commanded. For weeks, then months, the world was a canvas of desolation. The screams faded, replaced by an eerie, suffocating silence broken only by the mournful whisper of the wind through ruined structures and the distant, guttural cries of survivors struggling against a brutalized landscape. Food became a memory, clean water, a distant dream. The alien fleet, having executed its initial devastating purge, remained in high orbit, silent and watchful, a constant mocking reminder of humanity's utter defeat. They left no occupying forces, no ground troops. They simply hovered, an indifferent, omniscient presence, content to let the remnants of humanity wither and die on a scorched, broken planet. They thought we would crawl in ash, that our will would break, that our spirit would dissolve into despair. They miscalculated. They failed to account for the stubborn, irrational, unyielding spark of defiance that flickers brightest when all hope seems lost. From the deepest bunkers, from the most remote, forgotten corners of the globe, that spark began to glow. Not with the fire of conventional warfare, for that had been extinguished, but with the cold, calculating fury of strategic vengeance. Engineers, scientists, logistics experts, and disillusioned military strategists, survivors of the initial Holocaust, began to connect. Not through conventional networks, for those were gone, but through desperate, encrypted bursts of data sent via cobbled-together shortwave radios and salvaged satellite dishes pointed blindly at the heavens. Their message was simple, audacious, and utterly insane. The war wasn't over. It had just moved to a different arena. They saw what the aliens had ignored: Earth's orbital graveyard, thousands of dead satellites, defunct space stations, orbital debris fields, a silent, forgotten fleet of human ingenuity circling high above the ruined world. The idea was born from necessity, forged in the crucible of absolute defeat. If Earth's surface was a charnel house, then orbit, the very domain from which the enemy reigned, might just be humanity's last, desperate battlefield. These were not military satellites. They were communication relays, weather observation platforms, scientific probes. But in the hands of desperate, brilliant minds, repurposed with salvaged parts and fueled by a burning, vengeful rage, they could become something else entirely. The plan was terrifying in its scope, requiring an unprecedented level of coordination from a shattered world. It demanded the hijacking of dead systems, the repurposing of civilian technology, and the development of entirely new doctrines of engagement. It would be a war fought in the silent, unforgiving vacuum of space, with tools never designed for combat, against an enemy who believed us utterly broken. But as the first faint, unauthorized signals pulsed from hidden facilities across the ash-choked globe, reaching out to the silent, derelict orbital assets, a new kind of silence descended. It was not the silence of despair, but the pregnant hush before a storm. The aliens had unleashed a tempest of fire. Humanity was about to unleash a storm of vengeance, cold and precise from the very orbital darkness they had so carelessly overlooked. The initial signals were fragile whispers, ghost echoes in the vast, silent void. From hidden bunkers carved deep beneath the scarred surface, from makeshift command centers cobbled together in forgotten sublevels of abandoned cities, the remnants of humanity reached out, not with the raw power of a unified world, but with the desperate, precise touch of a surgeon. Their targets, the orbital graveyard. Thousands of dead satellites, defunct probes, and derelict space stations, once monuments to scientific curiosity and global connectivity, now silent metallic husks orbiting a dying world. The aliens, in their arrogance, had deemed these relics harmless, beneath their notice, mere cosmic dust. They saw only a shattered Earth, not the dormant potential orbiting above it. The first challenge was immense power. These orbital assets were dead, their solar arrays coated in ash, their batteries long drained. But necessity is the cruelest inventor. Teams of engineers, some barely out of their teens, others grizzled veterans who had once designed these very systems, worked in a perpetual twilight, fueled by nutrient paste and a burning, unquenchable hatred. They scavenged. From ruined cities, they hauled colossal industrial capacitors, high-yield batteries, and even salvaged nuclear thermoelectric generators from defunct deep-sea probes. The sheer logistics of moving such equipment across a broken world, bypassing alien surveillance, avoiding roving bands of desperate survivors, and navigating landscapes choked with debris and radiation, was a nightmare of epic proportions. Yet they did it. Piece by agonizing piece, power cells were airlifted by repurposed cargo drones. Silent radar-evading craft now repurposed for clandestine supply runs to remote, disguised launch sites. Small, custom-built micro-rockets, designed for atmospheric weather probes, were refitted to carry these power modules into low Earth orbit. Each launch was a gamble, a tiny, almost invisible flicker against the vast, watchful eye of the alien fleet. Most failed, incinerated on ascent, or simply drifted, lost. But a few, a precious few, made it. Once in orbit, the real work began. Robotic repair drones, originally designed for delicate space station maintenance, were remotely activated. Their programming, painstakingly rewritten by teams of expert coders working in shifts, now focused on a single, audacious task: to bring the dead back to life. They grappled with dormant satellites, connecting external power conduits, bypassing fried circuits, and overriding security protocols. The aliens had not bothered to destroy these orbital relics. They had merely deactivated them, or perhaps, in their alien logic, simply considered them irrelevant. This oversight was humanity's desperate window of opportunity. As the first trickle of power flowed back into a derelict weather satellite, a faint, almost imperceptible signal pulsed from its revived transponders. It was a beacon, not of distress, but of defiance. This wasn't just about bringing systems online, it was about weaponizing them. A weather satellite, designed to observe atmospheric patterns, became a potential kinetic projectile. Its thrusters, once used for orbital corrections, could now be repurposed for controlled deorbiting, turning a several-ton metallic object into a precision-guided missile. Communication dishes, once used to relay television signals, became high-gain directional energy emitters, capable of focusing salvaged alien weapon fragments or even raw, unfiltered power bursts. The concept was brutal in its simplicity, elegant in its desperation. They didn't have the resources to build new weapons, so they would turn everything already in orbit into a weapon. The network grew, not with a flourish, but with the painstaking accretion of small victories. One satellite connected to another, then another, forming a clandestine web of reanimated technology. The signals were heavily encrypted, cloaked in layers of white noise, mimicking cosmic background radiation to evade alien detection. Each successful reactivation was met with a surge of grim satisfaction in the underground bunkers. It wasn't joy. Joy was a luxury long forgotten. It was the cold, hard satisfaction of a plan taking root. Across continents, different teams specialized. Some focused on power delivery, others on control system overrides, a third on weaponization protocols, and a fourth on creating a unified command and control network. They worked in a silence broken only by the hum of ancient servers and the urgent whispers of code. The psychological shift was profound. The initial despair, the gnawing terror of utter defeat began to recede, replaced by a focused, methodical rage. Humanity had been reduced to prey, but now, from the silent depths of Earth's orbital graveyard, they were building a hunter. They were learning the enemy's patterns, analyzing the subtle energy signatures of the alien fleet, identifying vulnerabilities. The aliens maintained their synchronous orbits, their monstrous vessels silent, unchanging, a monument to their unchallenged supremacy. They remained utterly unaware that the very space they dominated was being silently rewired, retasked, and repurposed by the vermin they had so casually discarded. The orbital debris fields, once a hazard to navigation, became an asset. Thousands of shattered components, remnants of human space exploration, were not just junk. They were raw materials. Autonomous drones, guided by newly established orbital command nodes, began to harvest these fragments, bringing them to larger, reactivated space stations. These stations, once scientific outposts, were transformed into clandestine orbital foundries, humming with repurposed energy, their robotic arms assembling improvised weapons from the detritus of a dead civilization. Magnetic accelerators, designed for propulsion experiments, were repurposed to launch salvaged meteor fragments at extreme velocities. Refitted telescopes, once used to gaze at distant stars, became precision targeting arrays, their optics now focused with chilling clarity on the alien vessels below. Months passed. The ash still choked the lower atmosphere, the ruins still scarred the surface, but high above, a different kind of world was being built, a world of silent, orbital vengeance. The ghost fleet grew, a constellation of repurposed fury. Every reanimated satellite, every salvaged probe, every retasked space station was a node in a vast distributed weapons system. The alien fleet remained oblivious, their passive scans registering nothing more than the expected orbital decay and background radiation. They saw a ruined planet, not a coiled spring. They saw defeated prey, not a patient predator. The final phase began. The command and control network, a distributed intelligence across hundreds of reanimated orbital assets, achieved full operational readiness. The power conduits hummed with contained energy. The repurposed thrusters were primed, the targeting systems locked onto phantom coordinates. Every human survivor involved, from the engineers to the strategists, felt the cold, hard weight of what was coming. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about retribution. It was about proving, with surgical, brutal precision, that even a broken species, when pushed to the brink, could rise from the ashes not to crawl, but to strike. The silent orbital graveyard was no longer a tomb. It was a launch pad. The pregnant hush before the storm had matured into the silent, vibrating tension of a drawn bowstring. The arrow was aimed, and it was about to fly. The moment arrived not with a thunderous declaration, but with the precise, almost surgical quiet of a released spring. High above the scarred, ash-choked Earth, the first repurposed satellite, once a weather observation platform, now a silent, multi-ton kinetic projectile, began its descent. Its repurposed thrusters, once designed for gentle orbital corrections, fired in short, violent bursts, nudging the massive metallic cylinder out of its parking orbit and into a controlled, screaming dive. It was aimed at the underside of the alien flagship, a colossal vessel that had, for months, loomed like a dark god above the ruined continents, its primary shield generator a pulsating emerald eye. The aliens, secure in their unchallenged supremacy, had maintained static positions, their massive forms blotting out constellations, their passive scans registering only the expected orbital decay of human debris. They saw nothing, they felt nothing, until it was too late. The first impact was a whisper of data across the human command network, a cold, hard confirmation. For the alien fleet, it was a sudden, violent tearing of reality. The weather satellite, accelerating to hypersonic velocities, struck the flagship's underbelly with the force of a small asteroid. It wasn't a clean penetration. The flagship's primary hull plating, designed to withstand cosmic radiation and micrometeoroids, buckled and tore. A geyser of superheated plasma erupted from the impact point, accompanied by the shriek of tortured metal and the sudden flickering collapse of localized energy fields. Alarms, previously dormant, screamed across the alien fleet. Their passive scans, suddenly active and frantic, registered a kinetic event of impossible magnitude, an attack from what they had dismissed as inert orbital debris. Confusion rippled through their command structures. Before they could fully process the initial blow, the second wave struck. From the repurposed communication dishes of a dozen reanimated satellites, focused beams of raw, unfiltered energy lanced out. These weren't elegant, alien-grade particle weapons. They were crude, jury-rigged bursts of salvaged power, concentrated through repurposed antenna arrays, each pulse a desperate, furious shout. One beam, aimed with chilling precision, struck the primary sensor array of a heavy alien cruiser, melting through its reinforced shell like butter and blinding it instantly. Another targeted the bridge section of a smaller scout vessel, detonating its internal systems in a cascade of secondary explosions. The aliens, who had perfected the art of planetary bombardment, were now being blindsided by weapons cobbled together from the very detritus of their conquest. Their shields flared, massive energy barriers shimmering into existence, but they were slow, reactive, and localized. They had never anticipated a threat from within the orbital graveyard. The human strategy was simple in its brutality: overwhelm, disorient, then cripple. There was no attempt at a fair fight, no grand declaration of war. This was the vengeance of the hunted, striking from the shadows, while the alien fleet scrambled to raise full defensive screens and identify the source of the attacks. The next phase of the assault began. Hundreds of smaller, less significant orbital fragments, derelict probes, spent rocket stages, even chunks of shattered solar panels, now accelerated by repurposed magnetic accelerators housed within reactivated space stations, became a deadly hail. These weren't precision strikes, but a relentless, wide-area bombardment designed to saturate alien defenses, to force their shields to drain energy, to create chaos. The debris field, once a passive hazard, became a lethal blizzard of metallic shrapnel, peppering alien hulls, rattling their vessels, and forcing emergency evasive maneuvers that disrupted their formation. The alien response was a maelstrom of confusion and escalating aggression. Their vessels, previously static and monolithic, began to shift, their vast thrusters flaring as they attempted to orient their most heavily armored sections towards the perceived threat. Their own weapon systems, designed for devastating planetary bombardment, spun up, targeting the ruined Earth below, a futile, vengeful gesture. They still didn't comprehend the true source. Their scans, however, began to pick up faint new energy signatures emanating from the very orbital assets they had ignored. Recognition, slow and agonizing, began to dawn. The vermin were not only alive, but they were fighting back from the very space the aliens had so arrogantly claimed. From underground bunkers, the human strategists watched the telemetry, a grim satisfaction settling over their faces. Every flicker on the screens, every confirmed hit, was a testament to impossible ingenuity and unyielding will. They knew their window was narrow. The alien fleet, once they understood the nature of the threat, would surely dedicate resources to destroying every reactivated human asset, but for now, they were reeling. The initial shock had been profound. The assault continued, escalating in a relentless rhythm. Repurposed communication satellites, their dish arrays now hyper-focused, began to emit concentrated microwave bursts designed to overload alien sensor systems and fry internal electronics. These weren't destructive in the same way as kinetic impacts, but they sowed confusion, disrupted alien comms, and created phantom targets on their displays. Old decommissioned spy satellites, their high-resolution cameras now retasked, became precision targeting platforms, feeding real-time imagery of alien vessel damage back to the human command centers, allowing for dynamic reprioritization of targets. Every piece of dead technology had found a new, lethal purpose. The alien flagship, still recovering from the initial kinetic strike, became the focus of a coordinated multi-axis assault. From 3 different vectors, 3 more deorbited satellites, including a repurposed navigation array and a heavy geological survey platform, plunged towards it. This time, the flagship's shields were fully up, shimmering with energy. The first satellite slammed into the barrier, dissipating in a flash of incandescent light, its kinetic energy absorbed by the powerful field. The second followed, hitting the same weakened point, causing the shield to ripple violently, almost collapsing. The third, a 10-ton mass of hardened steel and defunct electronics, struck just as the shield flickered, punching through the weakened barrier and tearing a massive gouge along the flagship's spine. Secondary explosions rippled through the colossal vessel, its internal lights flickering and dying in entire sections. Chaos erupted within the alien fleet. Smaller escort vessels broke formation, attempting to intercept the incoming waves of repurposed debris and energy bursts. Their own weapon systems designed for broad-spectrum devastation struggled to lock onto the small, fast-moving orbital assets that were their attackers. They were like a giant swatting at a swarm of hornets, each sting precisely aimed. The human network, distributed across hundreds of orbital nodes, was too diffuse to be easily targeted. Destroy 1 satellite, and a dozen more continued the assault. Their attacks were synchronized, coordinated by the single unified command network, a ghost in the machine, an echo of a unified world. The retribution was not a single, decisive blow, but 1,000 cuts, each one precise, each one designed to bleed the enemy dry. The orbital graveyard, once a symbol of humanity's defeat, had become its crucible of vengeance. The silent, broken husks of technology were now screaming their defiance across the void, turning the alien fleet's arrogant complacency into a waking nightmare. The sky, once dominated by alien dreadnoughts, was now a battleground of unexpected asymmetrical warfare. Humanity, reduced to crawling in the ashes, had found its wings, not to flee, but to strike back from the very heavens they had been denied. The initial bombardment had been a declaration of intent. This orbital counterattack was the brutal surgical proof, and it was only just beginning. The silent, broken husks of technology were now screaming their defiance across the void, turning the alien fleet's arrogant complacency into a waking nightmare. The sky, once dominated by alien dreadnoughts, was now a battleground of unexpected asymmetrical warfare. Humanity, reduced to crawling in the ashes, had found its wings, not to flee, but to strike back from the very heavens they had been denied. The initial bombardment had been a declaration of intent. This orbital counterattack was the brutal, surgical proof. And it was only just beginning. Heekin. From the network of reactivated human orbital assets, the assault intensified. Each repurposed satellite, each derelict probe, each fragment of a shattered station became a node in a vast, distributed weapons system. The human strategists, operating from deep underground bunkers, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of tactical displays, orchestrated a symphony of destruction. They knew the aliens were vast, powerful, and utterly ruthless. But they were also predictable, reliant on their overwhelming might, and utterly unprepared for an enemy that weaponized its own defeat. The human strategy wasn't about winning a fair fight. It was about bleeding them dry, crippling them piece by piece, and turning their overwhelming advantage into a tangled, self-defeating mess. The alien fleet, still reeling, began to react with escalating frustration. Their colossal vessels, built for interstellar travel and planetary subjugation, proved cumbersome in this close-quarters orbital skirmish. Their energy shields, designed to deflect cosmic storms and high-velocity impacts, were constantly taxed by the relentless peppering of kinetic shrapnel and focused energy bursts. Every flash of incoming debris, every sudden flicker on their internal displays was a drain on their power cores, a strain on their command structures. Attempts to target individual human satellites proved largely futile. The orbital graveyard was too vast, the human assets too numerous and too small, often camouflaged amidst the legitimate debris. When an alien vessel finally locked onto and destroyed a human-controlled satellite, another dozen would immediately take its place, launching their own retaliatory strikes. It was like trying to drain an ocean with a sieve. Then came the more sophisticated blows. Human ingenuity, honed by desperation, reached new, audacious heights. Teams of engineers, working in repurposed underground server farms, executed the next phase, a digital assault. They had spent months reverse engineering the alien communication protocols from salvaged debris, exploiting vulnerabilities in their network architecture. Now, from repurposed ground stations, heavily shielded against detection, a torrent of data packets, laced with parasitic code, was uploaded to the orbital network. These weren't intended to destroy, but to corrupt. The alien fleet's internal comms, previously a seamless web of tactical data and command directives, began to glitch. Targeting systems experienced momentary freezes, sensor readings became unreliable, flickering with phantom contacts. The vast, synchronized alien mind, usually a cohesive unit, began to unravel under the digital assault, sowing confusion and mistrust among their ranks. While their internal systems were being systematically degraded, the physical assault continued unabated. Old weather balloons, launched from hidden ground sites and equipped with powerful electromagnetic pulse generators, floated silently into the upper atmosphere. Once in position, triggered by remote command, they detonated, unleashing precisely timed EMP waves. These weren't strong enough to cripple the heavily shielded alien vessels, but they caused momentary power fluctuations, disrupting critical systems for precious seconds. These seconds were exploited with ruthless efficiency. During one such EMP burst, a repurposed military surveillance satellite, now carrying a payload of self-forging tungsten rods, executed a suicide run. Its target, the primary thruster array of a heavy alien cruiser that had been particularly active in its attempts to bombard Earth. The EMP had caused the cruiser's localized shield to flicker for a fraction of a second. That was all it took. The tungsten rods, accelerated to incredible velocity, tore through the vulnerable thruster housing, detonating the volatile fuel cells within. A blossoming fireball erupted from the cruiser's stern, sending it tumbling uncontrollably, a broken behemoth spiraling towards the atmospheric re-entry burn. The sight of one of their own, a vessel previously untouchable, burning in the atmosphere, sent a ripple of genuine fear through the alien command. Their scans confirmed the impossible. The attack had originated from a human orbital asset, precisely timed with an electromagnetic pulse from below. The vermin, the primitives, were not only fighting back, but they were coordinating multi-axis, multi-spectrum attacks with a precision that bordered on preternatural. The aliens, accustomed to overwhelming force, found themselves outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and outthought. The human network, meanwhile, began to bring online its most audacious weapons, captured and repurposed alien technology. For months, daring recovery teams, under the cloak of night and the cover of constant orbital bombardment, had ventured into the scorched ruins, salvaging alien weapon components from crashed scout ships and shattered landers. Now, these scavenged pieces, reverse-engineered and jury-rigged onto human platforms, became instruments of their own destruction. A particularly large orbital research station, its original purpose long forgotten, now housed a jury-rigged alien plasma cannon. Its power source was crude, its aiming system improvised, but when it fired, a raw, unstable bolt of alien energy lanced out, striking an alien destroyer's bridge section with devastating force. The destroyer, its command staff incinerated, went dark instantly, drifting lifelessly. This was no longer just salvaged human tech. This was the enemy's own fire turned against them. The alien flagship, a dark, monolithic leviathan that had dictated the terms of Earth's destruction, became the ultimate target. Its primary weapon, a colossal energy cannon mounted on its dorsal spine, had been responsible for the searing of continents, the boiling of oceans. While the kinetic impacts and energy bursts had wounded it, the flagship remained functional, its weapons slowly recharging. Human intelligence, gleaned from hacked alien data streams, indicated the weapon's immense power requirements and its vulnerability during the final phase of its charge cycle. This was the window. From every remaining functional orbital platform, from every reactivated satellite, a coordinated, all-out assault was launched against the flagship. This was not about destruction, it was about surgical disablement. Repurposed high-frequency emitters, once used for planetary mapping, now focused their beams on the flagship's main sensor arrays, attempting to blind it. Kinetic projectiles, no longer just random debris, were guided with pinpoint accuracy towards the power conduits leading to the dorsal weapon, hoping to sever them. And then, from a derelict communications array, barely clinging to orbit, came the final, audacious strike. It had been equipped with a salvaged alien data conduit, directly patched into the flagship's network. While the alien command struggled with internal chaos and external attacks, the human operators, with a surge of grim determination, uploaded a focused, powerful virus directly into the flagship's weapon control systems. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The colossal energy cannon on the flagship's dorsal spine, which had been glowing with an ominous building charge, suddenly flickered. The emerald light that had pulsed with such menace turned blood red, then sputtered. Internal explosions ripped through the weapon's housing, secondary conduits overloaded, and a geyser of superheated plasma erupted from the weapon mount, tearing open the flagship's upper hull. The primary weapon, the instrument of Earth's devastation, had been turned against itself, internally detonated by human code. The flagship, now a crippled titan, spewed smoke and debris, its colossal weapon systems permanently silenced. A grim cheer echoed through the human bunkers. It was not a victory, not yet, but it was a turning point. The alien fleet, its flagship crippled, its command structure fractured, its mighty weapons silenced or degraded, was no longer the unassailable force that had brought Earth to its knees. It was a wounded beast, thrashing blindly in the dark, surrounded by a swarm of vengeful, ingenious predators. The orbital graveyard, once a symbol of humanity's defeat, had become its ultimate weapon, a silent, deadly crucible of vengeance. The aliens had come to conquer, but they had only awakened a sleeping giant, one that now struck from the very shadows of its own destruction. The sky, once their domain, now belonged to the ghosts of human ingenuity, screaming their defiance with every precise, brutal strike. The retaliation was far from over. The crippling of their monolithic flagship was the seismic shock that ripped through the alien fleet. Their previously synchronized movements, once a testament to their coordinated might, dissolved into a chaotic, panicked scramble. The vast, interconnected consciousness that had orchestrated Earth's destruction fractured, each remaining vessel now an isolated node, struggling to comprehend the impossible. Human strategists, deep within their subterranean command centers, saw the alien disarray not as a fleeting moment of weakness, but as the final, critical vulnerability to exploit. The orbital network, a vast, distributed, weaponized intelligence, shifted from surgical strikes to a relentless, all-out hunt. Smaller, more agile human-controlled drones, repurposed from their original functions and now equipped with salvaged alien plasma cutters, began to systematically sever the external communication conduits of larger alien vessels. Imagine a vast, interconnected mind suddenly suffering multiple, targeted lobotomies. The alien response became sluggish, their internal targeting system still plagued by the insidious parasitic code, their colossal energy shields flickering erratically under the unrelenting kinetic bombardment. The very silence from their crippled flagship was a beacon, no longer a threat, but a dying monument to their hubris. The remaining alien command vessels, desperate to restore order and re-establish a semblance of control, became prime targets. From the depths of the orbital debris field, previously inert fragments of a shattered moon mining station, now packed with high-yield conventional explosives, were maneuvered into suicide trajectories. Guided by the desperate, brilliant calculations of human navigators, these improvised warheads slammed into the engines and weapon arrays of several alien cruisers attempting to rally their forces. Explosions blossomed in the void, not the silent, cold bursts of energy that defined alien weaponry, but violent physical ruptures that tore through alien hulls, sending superheated shrapnel spiraling outwards in deadly clouds. The aliens, who had initially seen humanity as a mere infestation, now faced a species that had turned its entire orbital graveyard into a weaponized swarm. Each piece of wreckage, a potential projectile, every flicker of an old satellite, a possible launch platform. The sheer unpredictability of it was their undoing. Their advanced sensors, designed for detecting interstellar threats, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of noise and the cunning camouflage of humanity's improvised arsenal. Their tactical displays, once clean and orderly, were a chaotic mess of red alerts, lost contacts, and cascading system failures. The digital virus, once a nuisance, had burrowed deep into their core protocols, corrupting navigation, disrupting life support, and even causing localized atmospheric breaches on some vessels. The aliens, masters of space, found themselves drowning in a sea of digital and physical sabotage. Their own technology twisted against them, their overwhelming strength turned into a cumbersome burden. Then came the final audacious push. From the scarred surface of Earth, new payloads launched, not conventional weapons but highly modified probes. These probes were designed to latch onto alien vessels and deliver one last crippling blow. They weren't explosive, they were data bombs, carrying highly corrosive software designed to bypass even the most robust alien firewalls and directly target their propulsion systems. When they struck, a vessel wouldn't explode, but its engines would simply die, leaving it dead in the water, a helpless, drifting hulk, a sitting duck for the kinetic strikes that inevitably followed. One by one, the mighty alien dreadnoughts and cruisers, once symbols of an unstoppable armada, became derelict husks, drifting aimlessly through the void, their lights extinguished, their colossal forms reduced to silent, cold monuments of defeat. The alien commanders, their communication lines jammed, their sensors blinded, their ships crumbling around them, finally faced the terrible truth. They had underestimated humanity. They had expected a broken species, but found a vengeful one. They had anticipated a quick subjugation, but had ignited a wildfire of defiance that consumed their entire campaign. The alien flagship, a wounded Leviathan, its internal systems screaming with critical failures, its primary weapon, a gaping, smoking wound, began to list violently. Its remaining thrusters, weakened by the constant bombardment and digital interference, struggled to maintain its position. The human strategists, observing its desperate, dying struggle, issued their final command, a targeted, overwhelming assault on its remaining engines. From every functional orbital asset, a torrent of repurposed kinetic rods, salvaged alien energy bolts, and even fragments of their own destroyed vessels, now imbued with a deadly purpose, converged on the flagship's stern. It wasn't a single cataclysmic explosion, but a sustained, brutal battering. The flagship groaned, its structural integrity failing until, with a final agonizing shudder, its massive engines went dark. It was no longer a vessel of war, but a tomb, a testament to the price of arrogance. The remaining alien fleet, witnessing the definitive fall of their flagship, broke completely. The rigid command structure, so reliant on a central authority, dissolved into a frantic every ship for itself scramble. Vessels, damaged and demoralized, began to initiate desperate emergency FTL jumps, not towards Earth, but blindly away from it, fleeing into the terrifying unknown of deep space. Some didn't make it, their compromised systems failing mid-jump, resulting in brief, catastrophic distortions in space-time that simply winked out of existence. Others were too slow, too damaged, picked off by the relentless human orbital network, which pursued them relentlessly, turning their retreat into a devastating rout. The orbital graveyard, once a symbol of humanity's defeat, became the ultimate trophy. Alien wreckage, vast and grotesque, now floated alongside the shattered remnants of human dreams, a new, deadly constellation in Earth's orbit. The sky, once a canvas for alien terror, was now a monument to human defiance, littered with the ghosts of their invaders. Slowly, agonizingly, the last alien signatures faded from human sensors. The bombardment stopped, the silent screams of orbital warfare ceased, and eerie, profound quiet descended upon Earth. The world, scarred and broken, breathed a collective, shuddering sigh of relief. From the underground bunkers, human eyes, red-rimmed and exhausted, looked at the tactical displays. The orbital map, once a chaotic maelstrom of red alien contacts, was now dotted with the green markers of human control, interspersed with the cold, dead blue of alien wreckage. It was over. But victory was not triumph. It was survival, purchased at an unimaginable cost. Cities were ruins, oceans were poisoned, continents were seared, billions were lost. The air was still thick with the dust of destruction, yet humanity had endured. They had not crawled in the ashes, they had risen from them, armed with ingenuity and an unyielding will to survive. They had looked into the abyss of extinction and, instead of falling, had pulled their enemy in with them. The future was uncertain, the path to recovery arduous beyond measure. But humanity had faced the end. And by weaponizing their own defeat, they had written a new beginning. They were no longer the primitives. They were the survivors, the avengers, the inheritors of a scorched but free world. And the universe, now aware of Earth's terrible, tenacious spirit, would never again underestimate the resilience of humanity.